In our New Testament lesson this morning, the Apostle Paul sounds kind of harsh. He says, anyone unwilling to work should not eat. That sounds kind of strong to me. It sounds like he's scolding the people who are too lazy to work. He's saying, no freeloaders here. There's no welfare state here. If you're going to be part of this church, you're going to have to raise yourself up by your bootstraps. But I don't think that's actually what he's saying. What is happening in the church at Thessalonica is that people have taken literally what Paul told them when he was there, which is that the second coming of Christ is imminent. Jesus is going to return soon. And so some people said, well, if Christ is coming back in a week or a month or a year, then why should I worry about working? I'll just rely on other people and take it easy. And in answer to that, Paul writes this letter to the Thessalonians, and he says, yes, Christ is coming soon, but not that soon. We still have to do the work of the church. We still have to feed the poor. We still have to spread the message about Jesus. We still have to do our prayers. We don't just stop. We have to carry water, chop wood. And take me as an example, he says. When I was with you, didn't I work? I worked with my hands and I supported myself. So we should all do the same. Do your part. Don't just live off the generosity of others, but contribute to the work of the church. Well, what we do in the Episcopal Church is really no different than they did back in the church in Thessalonica. We work together to support the church. Everyone does what they can according to their circumstances. And we have this system. Near the end of the year, we send out pledge cards, and we put on the card what we think we'll be able to give to the church in the next year. And that works pretty well. Now, a pledge is not a contract. It's not a legal obligation. It's just an estimate of what we think we'll be able to give in the coming year. If our circumstances change, then we change the amount that we give. It's not locked in. Some people can give a lot. Some people can give a little. It doesn't matter. The main thing is that this is God's church, and we believe in this church. We believe in St. Germain's, and we want to support it. So we give what we can in terms of time and talent and treasure. I once had a parishioner who hated the idea of pledge cards. He said, what I give to the church is between me and God, and I don't need to write it down on a pledge card. But in actual fact, he was very generous, and he paid his pledge every month and raised it up a little bit every year. So even though he didn't give a pledge, he was committed to supporting his church. Some people say, every time I come to church, all they do is talk about money. They ask me for money. Every time I come, it's just money, money, money. That's all they care about at that church. And I agree that if we ask for money all the time, it sounds like desperation. It sounds like that's all we care about. But God has given us enough for what we need. God has given us all we have. Some of us have a lot. Some of us have a little, but we all have enough. Everything we have comes from God. And when we give our pledge to the church, we're just giving back to God something of what God has already given us. There's a story about a woman named Janie whose mother was in a nursing home. Her mother had dementia and wasn't able to take care of her affairs, and so Janie, who was the youngest of the 4 children, was selected to take care of her mother's affairs. She had the power of attorney. And she would go visit her mother. She didn't live too far away. And make sure the nursing home was, caring for her mother properly. And she would pay the bills. Her mother was well off, and so every month, Jenny would sit down with a checkbook and pay the nursing home and any other bills that came up. And while she was paying the bills, Janie would pay her mother's church pledge, the one that she'd always paid. And when her brother found out, one of her brothers found out, he said, "Why are we giving money to the church? Mother hasn't even gone to the church for a long time." And Janie said, "Well, I think Mom would want us to continue her pledge. She was active in the church all her life, and it was important to her, and I'm just, continuing what she was doing. Besides, we have plenty of money. It's not a problem. And the pastor visits her sometimes." And her brother said, "Oh, she doesn't even know when the pastor comes. That pledge, it's years old. It's not good anymore, and she's not getting anything for this money. When she was going to church, she got something for the money, but not anymore. It's just money down the drain. That's money that we're not going to get when the inheritance is divided. You're stealing from us." And Janie said, "Now that is just greedy. You shouldn't be coveting Mom's money before she even dies." So the next time she visits her mother, she tells her mother about this conversation, even though her mother doesn't seem to be able to understand. And her mother doesn't say anything, but in Janie's head, it seems like her mother's voice is saying, "You pay that pledge. That's God's money, it's not our money. All that money belongs to God, and I'm just giving a little bit back. Don't you dare steal God's money." So she keeps paying the pledge. And one Saturday night, she's paying the monthly bills, and she writes the check out to the church, and she thinks, maybe instead of mailing this check in, I'll just go to church tomorrow, and I'll put it in the plate. So next morning, she goes to church, and she puts the check in the plate when it comes around, and as she does, she has this very strange feeling. It's like her mom is sitting right there with her, and they're putting the check in the plate together. Next month, same thing. She writes out the check Saturday, and Sunday she brings it to church. And it's like she's sitting there with her mom, and they're both putting the check in the plate together. And so she starts doing this every month, just like something she's doing with her mom. And she starts finding out things about her mom she didn't know. The people in the church come to her and say, "Oh, we really miss your mother. She was really active in this church, and she was part of our women's group, and she organized the potlucks, and sometimes she helped with the flowers. Your mom was there for us when we needed her. She was one of us." So after a year or so, her mother died, and they had the funeral, and afterwards they went to the lawyer's office for the reading of the will. And the lawyer sat down and opened the envelope and read it. It said, "I, being of sound mind, hereby bequeath 10% of my estate to the church. And the remaining 90% is to be split between my 4 children." And her brother says, "No, I don't want 10% of the estate to go to the church. I don't even believe in God. I don't want this money to go to the church." And the lawyer says, "Well, it's not really up to you. We have to do what the will says and carry out the rule of the court. So you have no say in it, really." And Janie spoke up and said, the will just says what Mom wanted. She told me that is God's money, not hers, and she's just giving some of it back to God. And the brother says, do you really believe that crap? And she said, yeah, I guess I do. I mean, everything we have comes from God. And that's why we have what we have. And giving it back to the church is just giving some of God's money back to God. Well, we'll be sending out pledge cards the next week or two, and when you get your card, I hope you'll think about it, pray about it, and decide what you want to do. I think God is at work in this church, and I know that when I put our check in the plate, it makes me feel good. I feel like I'm doing something that's worthwhile. You will too.